when I read this part of your story, and it really conjures to mind to me a picture like a scene in Star Wars where Luke Skywalker goes off by himself to be on a planet by himself with Yoda maybe, or just by like real introspection and vulnerability. And like you said, some deep work on what am I really doing here? Can you share that? I think your dad actually led you there straight after this. You've fallen flat on your face for the first time and had failure and embarrassment and all of these emotions as a young teenager still. It's a lot to digest, but you went out and you did something fairly exceptional that really was a turning point for you.
Yeah. And this was 100% credit to my father, where, he had seen that pattern. And my father at the time, he tells me that he didn't feel like he had any other options. And I'll explain what that means. So, you have this son. He has this son who's exceptionally talented and gifted, who's throwing away this incredible opportunity, who's self-sabotaged, who just went through an entire training program and didn't make a team. Not in fact, didn't make the team, but got dead last at the trials. He felt it was in dire need for some dire situation, and he had to have some extreme consequences to try to shake things up, so to speak. And so there was this cabin. We fly back to Seattle after the trials. My dad tells me on the way home that he was going to take me to the cabin that we used to spend a lot of our holidays on. And this is a cabin it's not our cabin. We just rent the cabin. At the time, it was called the Iron Springs Resort. And it's now been taken over by a family, and it's renovated and it's beautiful. At the time, it was old.
Not beautiful.
It was not beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful set. I mean, it's what you would imagine a cabin in the woods to look like. Right? Like if you just went out hiking one day and you saw an old cabin that was, functional, but there's just not much there. That's what one of these was at.
Yeah.
And so when I say the word resort, and I say this in all due respect, it was nothing close to being a resort. There's no resort amenities in any sense.
It was a last resort for your dad.
Yeah, it was a last resort. And exactly. And this is also a place of an area of the country where there's really not much development and economic activity there. Like it used to be an old lumber town, 40 miles south. And so anyone who lives on the outskirts, you got to be wondering, why are these people living here? There's no way to make a living. So that effectively showed in the environment. There just wasn't a lot of people there. And I remember being there in the wintertime. It rains almost all day, every day. It gets dark at 4:35 p.m. And it was just a time where my dad said to me, you're going to stay here at this cabin. Yeah, I have food and I have clothes. I had been there so many times. I knew my way around, this area. It's right on the Pacific Ocean, 3.5 hours southwest of downtown Seattle. And he tells me, you're going to stay here for as long as it possibly takes for you to recognize and understand which path and which direction you're going to go in life and how you are going to go in that direction, more importantly. And what he was really saying to me was, you just threw an opportunity away because of your lack of effort and commitment and dedication towards something. I don't care that you didn't make the team. It's the way that you didn't make the team. That's what I care about. And I don't want you to go throughout your life in other areas, whether it's academics, whether it's in business, whether it's in school, with this type of defeatist attitude. And also this type of an attitude of where my dad didn't want me to be okay losing, right? Like he wanted it to affect me. He wanted it to fire me up. He wanted it to change psychologically that switch that goes on, that you are now a man on fire. He didn't see that in me. And for someone who struggled in this country for so many years, that was important to have, right? This survival mechanism. And so my father literally drops me off at this place. I'm 15 years old at the time. There's no one around.
Leaves you alone.
He leaves me. He drives back to Seattle. 3.5 hours, drives back to Seattle. I've got no cell phone. I've got no video games. There's no internet. There's none of that stuff exists. It's just literally me and nature, which I fully love that now. I look forward to those moments now. But back then, no, I have no friends. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, why I'm there. I also am very uncomfortable talking to myself, right? Because when you're placed in that type of environment, you're now trying to figure out and understand, why did my dad put me here? Does he hate me? Why did I not win? Why did I not, and it's, by the way, the depth of this texture and layers, these conversations they're not as deep as I'm able to articulate now, but back then emotionally, it was more just what the hell do you want to do? Like, why did you do this? And that began this like 7-day mindlessly just kind of going through the motions of training, going for long runs. I had like a small stationary bike that I had set up in the living room, which was the bedroom. And I didn't talk to a single person for like 9 days.
Do you feel like there was a process there that not that you knowingly stepped through, and maybe knowing now more than you knew then, like that you know that I did this in day 1 and day 2 and day 3? Or was it really just like your dad left you there by yourself, asking you to choose something, but to actually commit to something, right?
That's right.
And it was an organic thing for you. Like, how did that process? You were there for about a week, you say, right? 9 days, whatever. How was this? Talk us through what happened there.
Yeah. So when I was at the cabin, the first couple of days, just emotionally still distraught from the experience of the Olympic trials. So I was still feeling that pain. And then also the pain around like, why is my dad forcing me to be here? So like I wouldn't say hate, but a deep dislike for my dad started to brew because I wanted to point the finger at him. It's your fault that I'm here. You don't love me enough and you put me here at this cabin, not knowing that it was like real tough love. And my dad felt like there was no options because I wasn't listening to anything that anyone was telling me about the potential that I had. So he felt that I had to find the answer myself. And, each day I kind of was just mindlessly going for these runs. I had it was raining every single day. So I had huge blisters like in my my feet. And I was just in pain, man. I was just in physical pain, mental pain. I started journaling, kind of writing down my process and what I wanted to do. I think at the core level, I knew that my father wanted me to be pursuant of the Olympic path and journey. I think I felt that. But I deeply also felt that I wanted to make my own decision. And there was a couple of times where I was like, do I really want to do this? Like, do I even really enjoy it? And then finally, on the final day that I was there, and I say the final day because this is the day that I kind of came to this epiphany. And essentially, it wasn't like there was a huge parting of the clouds and like there's a lightning strike and like the answer was there. It was just a day that I just decided on this long run where I was completely miserable that what am I going to do? And what's that light switch and commitment level going to be? And I decided I am going to make a decision. And I run back to the cabin. I go to the payphone and I call my dad, which by the way, the payphone was like a mile away from the cabin. It was hilarious. Like I had to yeah. And so I go to the payphone. I call my dad. I tell him I've made a decision. My father doesn't ask me what the decision is. Instead, he says, great. I'll be there in like 4 or 5 hours or something. Drives, comes, picks me up. On the way home, I tell him and explain to him that I'm going to give this Olympic chance another shot. And this Olympic vision and dream one more try. And then he starts to ask me kind of deeper questions. So my dad, who's a very philosophical person, how are you going to do that? Right? Tell me about what is going to be different this time around. And I've got no answers, but I think what he was doing is he's just planting these seeds of, hey, that's great. You got this goal. Amazing. That's a great metric and tool for you. But what's the process of what is going to change? Tell me how you are going to deliberately enact true transformation in pursuit of that goal. And I then was shipped back off to Lake Placid, which I was willingly open to do. And this is now, I believe this is the end of January. No, so this is the end of January that I'm there. And there were several other athletes who also did not make the Olympic team. We're also training there. And we are watching the Olympics while we are training. So that's really painful.
That's
right?
sting, yeah.
It stung, but also it was a really good sting. It was this like just grit your teeth. And I remember being next to a friend of mine who was training. His name's Mike Corman. He went on to be a coach for US speed skating and such. And we were on these old, I want to say they're these German or they're these Dutch bikes. And we were doing these crazy bike intervals, pure anaerobic threshold. And
pain, a lot of pain, physical.
A lot of pain. And the workout was, I don't remember the workout exactly, but it was like some ridiculous workout. And I remember looking over at Mike, and we were watching the Olympics, by the way, while we're doing it. We're watching the Olympics while being on the bike. And I remember looking at Mike, and him looking at me. And it was just like this word or this sentence that was not said verbally, but like we just knew. It was like this nod of, today's the day that we are going to crush ourselves on this training session. We are going to punish ourselves for all of that time that we didn't do what we should have done. An hour into it, Mike is throwing up, just vomiting all over the place. I didn't throw up very easily, so I didn't, but it was the dumbest of workouts you could possibly imagine. It's like, why don't we do 50 times 3 minutes anaerobic threshold, and do like
for those who don't train at that sort of level very often, that's like just pure, think about your lungs burning pretty much for the entire session, right? Like that's your lungs, your legs, everything is going to burn for the whole time.
Yeah, it made no sense in terms of sports science, but this was purely just a mental exercise. And on that day, it was very clear to me that I was willing to truly commit. I had told my father that I was willing to commit, but I was there. But it was on that training session, Paddy, that I remember with great detail the feeling and the look that I had. Mike was to my left, looking at him looking at me, and just being like, "Yep,
it's real.
This is real." And we deserve to be here right now, not there. We don't deserve to be there. We deserve to be here. And because we deserve to be here, we are going to make sure that we maximize every training session by the time we got to the world trials.